Serve me in Mandarin for 50 grand cash. The billionaire's voice sliced through Manhattan's most exclusive dining room, turning a quiet Tuesday into a battlefield where one underestimated server was about to rewrite the rules of humiliation. Marcus Sterling's declaration froze every conversation at the Azure Palace, where reservations required 6-month waiting lists and entrees cost more than most people's monthly rent. Green currency landed on Nina Chen's polished tray like calculated insults, $50,000 fanning across silver metal, transforming her workspace into a stage for degradation that every elite patron turned to witness. Nina Chen, 28, had never imagined her existence as a doctoral holder in applied linguistics would collapse into daily survival mode. Yet here she stood in crisp black service attire, delivering $1,000 champagne bottles to customers who never glanced at her face while barking orders. Marcus reclined in his handcrafted Italian chair, artificial tan glowing under crystal chandeliers. "What's wrong, sweetheart? 50 grand not enough motivation?" He gestured toward 3 Korean executives seated at his table. "My associates here will evaluate whether your Mandarin passes inspection." The entire establishment had transformed into a contemporary gladiator arena. Diners at surrounding tables feigned interest in their lobster thermidor, yet every ear tuned into the public spectacle Marcus was orchestrating. This was Tuesday evening in New York's financial nucleus, where men like him determined the fate of global markets between appetizers and dessert. Nina studied the scattered currency on her tray. $50,000 represented more than 3 years of waitressing wages. It could eliminate her father's medical debt, extract her teenage brother from the failing public institution he attended, and finally allow her to breathe without the suffocating pressure that had crushed her chest for 4 years. But she understood this wasn't about money. This was about dominance. This was Marcus Sterling, a 51-year-old real estate empire builder, proving to critical investors that he commanded absolute control, that humiliating a simple Asian waitress was merely another Tuesday demonstration of power. "Here's what makes this entertaining," Marcus continued, clapping slowly in theatrical mockery. "When you fail, and failure is guaranteed, you'll apologize here before every witness for wasting our valuable time, because I'd wager my entire portfolio you can't even pronounce hello in Mandarin." The Korean executive's laughter emerged awkward and forced. One gentleman, an elderly man with platinum-rimmed spectacles, frowned with visible discomfort. Nina inhaled deeply, fingers digging into the tray's edge until her knuckles whitened. Briefly, her mind wandered to her previous existence as Dr. Nina Chen when she delivered presentations at international academic conferences, and her name symbolized scholarly excellence. 4 years ago, everything disintegrated when her father received a pancreatic cancer diagnosis. Medical expenses, bankruptcy, complete loss. Now she occupied this space, being degraded by a man who probably couldn't distinguish Mandarin from Cantonese. "I accept," she stated, her voice emerging steadier than anticipated. Marcus's smile flickered momentarily. "Excuse me?" "I accept your challenge, Mr. Sterling. I will serve you in Mandarin, and upon completion you will transfer 50,000 here before all witnesses." While everyone dismissed the server who dared accept the impossible proposition, her eyes revealed a tranquility that only exists in those who have weathered far more devastating storms and harbor secrets too formidable to reveal before the opportune moment. If this story of prejudice and reversal has captured your attention, stay watching, because what unfolds next is something nobody will ever forget. Marcus clapped deliberately, each sound reverberating through the space like rifle shots. "Excellent. Let's escalate this entertainment value." He turned to the Korean executives, his cruel expression widening further. "Gentlemen, you have just observed a typical delusion. This employee genuinely believes she can impress distinguished guests." Park Min-ho, the eldest investor, adjusted his spectacles with evident discomfort. "Marcus, perhaps it would be preferable—" "No, no, Min-ho," Marcus interrupted, raising his palm. You need to comprehend how operations function here. These individuals exist in fantasy bubbles. He gestured dismissively at Nina. I'd bet she watched some martial arts cinema and believes she can dazzle you with scattered vocabulary. The second investor, Lee Jae-sung, frowned deeply. His English carried no accent whatsoever. This is becoming inappropriate, Marcus. Inappropriate? Marcus laughed boisterously. This is educational. You want to invest in New York? You need to understand reality. He pointed at Nina. This woman probably never completed secondary education. She occupies this position because she's qualified for nothing superior. Nina remained motionless, but internally, memories transported her back 4 years, when her life held meaning. Dr. Nina Chen, Associate Professor of Computational Linguistics at Princeton University, a specialist in natural language processing algorithms, fluent in 11 languages, international keynote speaker sought by multinational corporations. Everything altered with a midnight phone call. Your father collapsed. It's critical. David Chen, 62, Nina's only remaining family, was in intensive care. Medical bills began as a stream and became a tsunami. Insurance denied coverage. Experimental protocols not included. Intensive therapies. Nina liquidated everything. Her Brooklyn apartment, her vehicle, her jewelry, even her collection of first-edition linguistics textbooks. She took a sabbatical leave from the university, then an extended absence, and simply couldn't return. When David finally stabilized after 8 months, he was transformed. He required constant care, physical rehabilitation, and expensive pharmaceuticals. Insurance had limitations. Did Nina have alternatives? Medical debt reached $900,000. She declared bankruptcy. The university filled her position. Colleagues stopped responding to emails. Friends vanished when they realized she no longer served their career networks. You know what the fundamental problem is with you people? Marcus continued, now completely intoxicated by his own authority. You perpetually want more than you deserve, always attempting to be something you're not. Nina blinked, returning to the present. She observed Marcus gesticulating dramatically, oblivious that he was about to confront someone with a Ph.D. in applied linguistics from Stanford, specializing in Mandarin dialectology, who had delivered graduate seminars on tonal variations to packed lecture halls. You know how many languages I command? Marcus asked the investors rhetorically. English and capital? And that's all that matters in the real world? Kim Soo-jin, the third investor who had remained silent, finally spoke. Her English had a slight accent but was precise. Perhaps we should provide her with a genuine opportunity. A genuine opportunity? Marcus laughed. Soo-jin, you're too compassionate. But look at her. Really examine her. He pointed at Nina with disdain. This woman transports plates for survival. She can probably barely afford rent for a studio apartment in Queens. He wasn't incorrect. Nina shared a microscopic apartment with 4 other people, worked dual jobs, server at the Azure Palace nights, medical assistant at a clinic days. She slept 4 hours nightly when fortunate. Every cent went to her father's medication, physical therapy, and basic survival necessities. But Marcus didn't know she still maintained access to academic databases, that she studied computational linguistics during pre-dawn hours when sleep evaded her, that she corresponded with researchers in Shanghai in fluent Mandarin, that her dissertation on neural language processing had been referenced in more than 300 international papers. Let's establish parameters clearly, Marcus announced, obviously relishing himself. If she can deliver a convincing presentation in Mandarin, not isolated words, but a complete menu exposition with detailed explanations, I'll transfer the $50,000. Minho attempted again. Marcus, this really isn't necessary. But Marcus continued, completely ignoring the objection. When she fails, and spectacular failure is inevitable, She will kneel precisely here and apologize to every individual in this establishment for wasting our time." A heavy silence descended upon the hall. Even the servers stopped moving. Customers at other tables had turned completely to observe the spectacle. "And furthermore," Marcus couldn't stop, "she'll publicly acknowledge that she attempted to deceive us, that she's nothing but a desperate fraud craving attention." Su Jin shook her head, visibly disturbed. "This isn't right." "It's absolutely right." Marcus slammed his fist down, making glassware rattle. "You want to conduct business with me? You need to understand how I operate. I don't tolerate deception. I don't tolerate performance art. And I definitely don't tolerate anyone attempting to make me appear foolish." Nina observed everything with the calmness of someone who had already sacrificed much more than her dignity. 4 years of serving tables had taught her that certain moments require retreat and certain moments require advancement. This was a moment to advance. "I accept all conditions," she said calmly. "Oh," Marcus laughed incredulously. "Even kneeling and apologizing when you fail? Even that? And publicly admitting you're a fraud?" "If I fail, yes." Marcus turned to the investors, his arms extended in a theatrical gesture. "Gentlemen, you are about to witness a valuable lesson in the distinction between genuine confidence and delusion." He had no idea that every cruel word emerging from his mouth was fueling a force growing in the silence, a determination forged by 4 years of humiliation that was about to find its outlet in the most devastating way imaginable. As every person present settled in to observe what they believed would be another display of power over the vulnerable, no one noticed the almost imperceptible glimmer of satisfaction that passed through Nina's eyes. The look of someone who had finally found the perfect opportunity to show that some battles are won long before they are fought. "Very well. Then let's commence this spectacle," Marcus announced, clapping his hands like a ringmaster. "But first, I need to ensure there's no cheating." He gestured to a nearby server. "Bring the specialized Mandarin menu, the one we use for investors from Beijing." The server hesitated. "Mr. Sterling, that menu contains over 50 different dishes with very specific technical descriptions." "Perfect." Marcus laughed loudly. "If our linguistic expert genuinely knows Mandarin, she won't struggle with a few technical details, correct?" Minho shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Marcus, this is becoming cruel." "Maybe we should—" "Cruel!" Marcus interrupted him. "Minho, you don't understand. This is pedagogy. These people need to learn their limitations." He pointed at Nina. "Look at her. She still maintains that arrogant posture. She still believes she can deceive us." What Marcus didn't know was that at that precise moment, Nina was mentally reviewing her doctoral dissertation on dialectal variations in contemporary Mandarin. 4 years ago, she had spent 8 months in Shanghai as a visiting researcher at Fudan University, studying regional gastronomic terminology specifically. Her advisor, Professor Zhang Wei, had been extremely demanding. "Doctoral candidate Chen," he would often say in Mandarin, "if you cannot explain a Hunan dish using the correct Shanghai tones, how do you expect to translate international trade agreements for multinational corporations?" Nina had cried with frustration many nights in that cramped apartment in Shanghai, memorizing not only vocabulary but cultural subtleties, regional variations, and culinary terminology that only native chefs understood. She had presented her research in fluent Mandarin to a panel of Chinese professors who questioned her for 3 hours straight without a single English word. "While we await the menu," Marcus continued, clearly amused, "how about she tells us a little about her experience with languages?" He made air quotes with disdain. "Where exactly did you learn Mandarin? Watching subtitled dramas?" Su Jin, who had remained relatively quiet, finally spoke up. "Marcus, may I ask a question?" Her English was precise, formal. "Why is this so important to you?" "Because," Marcus leaned back in his chair, "you are considering investing $300 million with me. You need to understand how I operate, how I identify individuals who try to pass themselves off as something they are not." He gestured dramatically. "This woman is clearly lying about her abilities. And if I can't spot such an obvious lie, how can you trust my judgment for investments?" Jae Sung shook his head. "That doesn't make any sense, Marcus. Even if she doesn't know Mandarin, that has nothing to do with your business competence." "It does." Marcus slammed his fist on the table. "It's about integrity, about honesty, about not tolerating people who try to deceive me." What none of them realized was that while Marcus was speaking, Nina was observing every detail. In the last 8 months of serving at the Azure Palace, she had developed a peculiar skill, reading people, especially powerful and arrogant people. Marcus Sterling was an open book to anyone who knew the right pages. He constantly mentioned his Asian investors, always mispronouncing Korean names, always making completely incorrect cultural references. Last month, she had served a table where he tried to impress Japanese clients by discussing ancient Korean traditions. The man was a cultural fraud disguised as an international tycoon. "Ah, here it is," Marcus announced when the server brought a leather-bound menu. "Special menu straight from our chefs in Shanghai. 50 dishes, each with a full technical description." He opened the menu, and his expression changed slightly. For a second, he seemed less confident. "Well, there are many characters here," he muttered. Minho leaned over to see. "Can I examine?" "No, no." Marcus quickly closed the menu. "She needs to do this independently without assistance." He handed the menu to Nina. "Come on, expert. Describe 5 different dishes in Mandarin with detail." Nina took the menu, opened it to the first page, and almost smiled. It was exactly the kind of menu she had studied exhaustively in Shanghai. She immediately recognized several Sichuan specialties that she had not only studied but also prepared during her cultural immersion courses. "Can I choose which dishes?" she asked calmly. "Of course," Marcus laughed. "Choose the simplest ones if you want. You're going to fail regardless." What Marcus couldn't imagine was that at that moment, Nina was mentally leafing through her memory for the presentation she had given at Shanghai University on the evolution of gastronomic terminology in contemporary Mandarin. She had defended that presentation to an audience of 300 people, including food critics and renowned chefs. "Before I begin," Nina said, looking directly at Minho, "I would like to confirm something with you gentlemen. Are you fluent in Mandarin?" Minho blinked in surprise. "I speak moderately, but what about you, Mr. Lee?" Jae Sung shook his head. "Just the basics. Why do you ask?" Marcus laughed loudly. "See? You're already making excuses." "Oh, you guys won't understand anyway," he mimicked a childish voice. "Pathetic." "Actually," Nina continued calmly, "I asked because I want to ensure there will be at least one person qualified to evaluate my pronunciation, intonation, and correct use of tones." Su Jin sat up straight in her chair. "I'm fluent," she said slowly. "I was born in Seoul, but I lived in Beijing for 12 years. My Mandarin is adequate." Marcus hesitated for the first time. "Well, that's, of course, perfect." But inside, he was beginning to feel a twinge of nervousness. Until that moment, Nina's unshakable confidence had been merely irritating. Now it was starting to seem genuine. "There's one more thing," Nina continued. "You mentioned that this is about integrity and honesty. May I suggest we make it more interesting?" "How so?" Marcus asked, his voice slightly less confident. "If I can not only describe 5 dishes in Mandarin, but also explain their regional origins, preparation techniques, and cultural significance, you double the wager to 100,000. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the servers stopped moving. "And if I fail," Nina continued, "in addition to kneeling and apologizing, I'll work for free at this establishment for an entire month." Marcus stared at her. For a moment, he seemed to want to refuse, But with all eyes on him, especially those of the Korean investors, he couldn't appear cowardly. 100,000, he repeated slowly. That's right. And you work for free for a month if you fail. Correct. Minho tried to intervene one last time. This has gone too far. I accept, Marcus announced, extending his hand to Nina. 100,000 if you succeed. A month of unpaid labor if you fail. Nina shook his hand firmly. Deal. What she didn't say, what she kept carefully hidden behind that serene expression, was that 4 years ago, she had been invited by the Chinese consul general to a dinner where she simultaneously translated diplomatic speeches on international gastronomic cooperation. What she didn't mention was that her dissertation had been published by Oxford University Press under the title Linguistic Bridges, How Food Vocabulary Reflects Cultural Evolution in Modern Mandarin. What she didn't reveal was that for 8 months straight, she had dined with Chinese families in Shanghai, discussing ancestral recipes and dialects that not even all natives mastered. As Marcus prepared to witness what he believed to be the ultimate humiliation of a mere server, Nina took a deep breath and prepared to show the difference between arrogance based on privilege and confidence built on genuine knowledge. The menu was open before her. The investors leaned forward. The entire restaurant held its breath. And then, with all the calm of someone who had faced Chinese academic panels that would make Marcus Sterling cry with intimidation, Nina began to speak in Mandarin so perfect and fluent that even Su Jin's eyes widened in surprise. At that moment, as the first words emerged from her mouth with the precision of someone who had spent years studying not only the language, but the cultural soul behind each syllable, it became clear that this would not just be a lesson in languages. It would be a master class in how true competence always finds a way to reveal itself, especially when underestimated by those who confuse money with intelligence. Good evening, distinguished guests. Allow me to present our exclusive selection for tonight, Nina said in Mandarin, her pronunciation so perfect that Su Jin immediately sat up straight in her chair, her eyes wide. It wasn't just fluency, it was academic, formal Mandarin with precise tones that demonstrated years of intensive study. Nina continued, her voice flowing like music. We will begin with authentic Sichuan mapo tofu prepared with 3-year-aged Pixian chili peppers, following the traditional technique of Master Chen from Chengdu, she explained in Mandarin. Marcus blinked in confusion. Wait, is that real Mandarin? Su Jin raised her hand, requesting silence, completely mesmerized. Nina continued. This dish represents the culinary philosophy of balancing mala, the numbness of Sichuan pepper with the heat of red chilies. The silky texture of tofu symbolizes the harmony between simplicity and complexity, she said in perfect Mandarin. My God, Su Jin muttered in English, looking at the other investors. She's not just speaking Mandarin. She's explaining gastronomic philosophy with vocabulary that not even all Chinese people know. Marcus's face began to pale. That has to be a trick. Nina turned to him and, for the first time that evening, smiled. Would you like me to continue in Beijing dialect, Hong Kong Cantonese, or perhaps Taiwanese Mandarin, Mr. Sterling? She asked calmly in English. What do you mean by different dialects? Marcus stammered. Well, Nina replied, and then began to speak in fluent Cantonese. In Hong Kong, we would present the same dish with a different cultural approach, emphasizing the traditions of Qing dynasty tea houses, she explained in Cantonese. Su Jin slammed her hand on the table. Perfect Cantonese, authentic Hong Kong accent. Marcus was visibly desperate now. Who the hell are you? Nina paused, looked at him with devastating calm, and replied, I am Dr. Nina Chen, Ph.D. in computational linguistics from Princeton University, specializing in natural language processing, fluent in 11 languages, former associate professor, visiting researcher at Fudan University, Shanghai, author of Linguistic Bridges, How Food Vocabulary Reflects Cultural Evolution in Modern Mandarin, published by Oxford University Press. The silence that followed was absolute. I worked as a simultaneous translator for the United Nations, for consulates, and for international conferences. 4 years ago, I gave up everything to care for my father when he had pancreatic cancer. The medical bills bankrupted me. Her voice did not waver once. Minho was speechless. You're a real doctor. With a postdoctoral degree in Chinese dialectology from Stanford, Nina replied calmly. I spent 8 months in Shanghai studying regional food terminology specifically for my dissertation. Marcus tried to recover, but his voice came out strangled. That's impossible. A doctor can't be working as a server. Nina interrupted him. Why not, Mr. Sterling? Don't doctors need to eat? Don't they need to pay bills? Can't they have sick families who need care? Su-jin rose from her chair. Marcus, you just tried to publicly humiliate one of the most qualified academics I've ever met. I didn't know, Marcus protested desperately. Exactly, said Nina, her voice cutting like a knife. You didn't know, but you assumed. You looked at an Asian woman serving tables and decided she was ignorant, uneducated, and inferior. Jae-sung shook his head in disbelief. Marcus, what kind of person are you? Let me finish the presentation, Nina continued, returning to Mandarin. The second course is Peking duck prepared according to the technique of the Quanjude restaurant established in 1864. The 24-hour marinating process and traditional fruitwood oven create the characteristic crispy skin that represents centuries of culinary refinement, she explained with technical perfection. Marcus was sweating now. The people at the other tables had stopped pretending not to be paying attention. Everyone was watching, mesmerized. The third dish, Nina continued in Mandarin, is Shanghai Xiaolongbao, where each dumpling contains exactly 18 folds, a number that symbolizes prosperity in Chinese culture. The broth inside is prepared with gelatinized pork marrow that liquefies in steam, a technique developed during the Ming Dynasty. Su-jin was quickly translating for the others in English. She's explaining historical and technical details that only master chefs know. This is extraordinary. Stop, Marcus suddenly shouted, banging his fist on the table. Stop this charade. This is a setup. You guys planned this. Set up what? Su-jin turned to him, her voice icy. That she knows more about Chinese culture than you ever dreamed of learning? She can't be a doctor and be working here. Richard was clearly panicking now. Why not? Minho asked coldly. Because people like you believe that intelligence and education are the exclusive property of the wealthy? Nina placed the menu on the table. Mr. Sterling, you offered me $100,000 to do something I was doing professionally 6 years ago before life knocked me down. Technical description of Chinese cuisine was literally part of my research area. This can't be happening, Marcus muttered, running his hands through his hair. It is happening, Su-jin said, taking her cell phone out of her pocket. And you know what, Marcus? My company was considering a $300 million partnership with you. She started typing. Was. No, wait. Marcus stood up desperately. A man who publicly humiliates a brilliant scholar out of pure prejudice is not someone we do business with, Jae-sung said, also taking out his phone. You can't cancel everything because of a misunderstanding, Marcus pleaded. Misunderstanding? Minho laughed humorlessly. You tried to destroy this woman's dignity for entertainment. That's not a misunderstanding. It's cruelty. Nina watched Marcus crumble, but felt no satisfaction, only a deep sadness that men like him existed. Mr. Sterling, your $100,000, please. With trembling hands, Marcus opened his wallet and began counting the bills. Each bill he placed on the table seemed to strip away a piece of his arrogance. Now, Nina said when he was finished, I would like you to apologize, not to me, but to all the people who have had to endure your prejudices over the years. Marcus looked around. The entire restaurant was watching. Important clients, high society people, all witnessed his complete humiliation. "I apologize," he muttered. "I didn't hear you," Nina said calmly. "I apologize," Marcus shouted, his voice echoing through the silent hall. It was at that moment, as one of the most powerful men in Manhattan publicly begged forgiveness for his ignorance, that everyone realized they had just witnessed something much greater than simple revenge. They had seen how true greatness always finds a way to reveal itself, especially when tested by petty tyrants who confuse money with moral superiority. 6 months later, Nina was in her office on the 52nd floor of a skyscraper in Manhattan, director of intercultural relations at Park Lee International. She earned $200,000 a year and had become a reference in multicultural corporate communication. Su Jin had personally offered her the position after that memorable night. "People with your intelligence and dignity are exactly what we need to expand our business globally," she said in perfect Korean, a language Nina also spoke fluently. Her father, David, now received the best medical care. They had moved to a spacious apartment on the Upper East Side. His recovery was slow but steady. Marcus Sterling was not so lucky. The story of his public humiliation had spread across social media, going viral with a headline, "Racist Tycoon Destroyed by Dr. Server." The video recorded by customers racked up 20 million views. Korean investors not only canceled the $300 million partnership, but also spread the story in international business circles. Other investors pulled out. Banks questioned loans. His construction company went bankrupt in 4 months. His wife filed for divorce, taking half of the remaining assets. His adult children cut off contact, ashamed. Marcus lost his Manhattan penthouse, his luxury vehicles, his reputation. "He tried to belittle me because he believed his wealth made him superior," Nina reflected during a lecture at Princeton University, where she had returned as a guest lecturer. But he discovered that intelligence, dignity, and competence cannot be purchased in a store. In the audience, students gave her a standing ovation. Some cried, inspired by her journey of overcoming adversity. Marcus now works as a salesman at a car dealership in Brooklyn, earning minimum wage. He sometimes recognizes Nina on the business news, always as a respected expert on television programs. Nina learned that the best revenge is not to destroy those who hurt you. It is to build something so great that their pettiness becomes irrelevant. She turned years of humiliation into fuel for a success that no prejudiced person could have imagined. Life tried to silence her, but she responded with excellence. Racism tried to limit her, but she expanded beyond any boundaries. Arrogance tried to humiliate her, but she rose above all expectations. If this story of overcoming adversity has touched you, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Winds of Thought for more stories that prove our greatness is not measured by skin color, origin, or current circumstances, but by the strength to never accept being less than who we really are.